For this Tuesday. It's the 16th of June, and Stivers Ford is downright proud to salute some great things happening and some great organizations, Jackie. We have another one here we want to talk about that. Make sure people are aware of one that is very important. We have former Iowa Congressman Leonard Boswell joining us, as well as the CEO of Casey's General Stores, Bob Myers, joining us, as we want to talk a little bit about Home Base Iowa.
Let's
Jackie,
do it.
We talked about it with the governor when he was here. And Leonard, you are very proud of this, aren't you?
I am, very much so. It's a good thing. And for just a little background, and I'll certainly yield to my colleague, Colonel CEO Bob Myers, but you know, a lot of veterans and active servicemen and women are being told you got to go because of sequestration and cutting the forces, and it's a big number. And here in Iowa, we had some needs and low unemployment and so on. And our Adjutant General saw that there was opportunity. He conceived an idea, took it to his Commander-in-Chief, the governor, and he embraced it. And the 2014 legislation took place, and it was a priority. And he had Mr. Myers and me on the floor and said that this is one of my priorities. Speaker Paulson embraced it, Senator Gronstal embraced it, the minority leaders embraced it, and a lot of good has happened, which I think we're going to get to talk about.
I was going to say, so the basic idea is that Iowa is a great place for veterans.
It is. We know that, and we had to go out and tell folks that come here. You know, if you have to leave and you can't do what you've been doing because of these circumstances you had no control over, you know, bring those skills and come to Iowa. We'll make you welcome, your families. But we had a lot to do to get prepared, and I think that Bob will address that. And I'd like to yield to him because that's what I need to do.
Now, that's what we're talking about, Bob, is we talked a good game, but how has Casey's implemented this?
Well, Casey's in the state of Iowa alone, we've hired over 300 veterans in our stores. We're very proud of that, but we're expanding that out into all of our stores in all 14 states.
How many stores does Casey's have now?
Well, we're pretty close to 1,900 stores.
1,900?
Yeah, in 14 states.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Now, why was it so important for Casey's to get behind this type of project?
Well, I think Colonel Boswell, Congressman Boswell, mentioned that. We're both retired military officers.
Thank you for serving.
Thank you. And
draftees to start with.
We're both draftees.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Both draftees. So we have a shared affinity for veterans. Yeah. And we know that this young crop of veterans coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, their multiple combat tours, 3, 4, 5, was a much greater sacrifice than Congressman Boswell and I had during Vietnam. And there's this compelling need, if you will, to provide meaningful job opportunity for these young veterans coming out of the services. Many of them were counting on that military retirement pay. Now being forced out of service with 15, 16, 17 years of service, it simply seems to be unfair. But in order to do that, we had to change Iowa law, and we did, with the governor's help and our Iowa legislature. And so in Memorial Day in 2014, the governor signed into law legislation that effectively changed about 20 different pieces of Iowa laws.
As I say, what had to change?
Well, for example, military retired pay. We were one of the states that taxed military retirement pay. And if we wanted to be competitive, like the state of Illinois, we all know the budget problems the state of Illinois has, and for them to give up that military retired pay, the taxes off of that, that said something. We were non-competitive with them. We were non-competitive with other states around us because we continued to tax military retired pay. We no longer do that. But also educational opportunities in that. And so we've created a number of different things through those changes, all of which are attracting veterans back here to the state of Iowa. Now, I dare say that many of those are native Iowans, but I'd also argue that many of them would not come back to their home state if it hadn't been for changes that were made.
Now, Congressman, you know that's important to come back home, isn't it?
What it is. Yes, we both have proven that, what we've done, and I came back a little earlier than I'd planned on because of circumstances that won't take time to discuss, but you know, I decided to come back to the farm and back to my roots, if you will, and I got a call from Bell Helicopter. Well, I go to Saudi Arabia and do a helicopter school, and I said, no, I've got other plans, but then they started giving me incentives to consider, to man some of the things that Bob just talked about. And then I think it was Halliburton in the Gulf of Mexico. Would I come down there and do some of that stuff? Because they knew my history. And I said no, but they gave the same thing. They offered these things that Iowa didn't offer. And so this, what Bob had just talked about, was very important for us to get this thing up and going. And it's a success story, which we're anxious to share with you. It's really worked out.
Because we all know Iowa's a great place to live, but you also need those incentives there to have them want to come. So where are we now with Home Base Iowa? Like, where does it go now into the future?
As you know, early on, the Iowa Business Council, through the Iowa Business Council, established a goal of hiring 2,500 veterans. And so if you could do some extrapolation, the number of young men and women that were being released from the services, that total number over the course of 5 years would be somewhere around 350 to 500,000, and Iowa's portion of that, if you do some extrapolation, somewhere around 3,000. Well, here we are, a year and a half into the program, and with the limited tracking capability that we have, we know we've hired 1,300 veterans as a result of the changes.
And a point there, Bob, that you speak for yourself, but I haven't had not one complaint from a veteran or from a business that is engaged in this. And we've had over, 700 businesses have jumped in and part of Home Base Iowa and a number of local governments. And I haven't had a single complaint.
Now, Congressman, what are some of the advantages of a business saying, you know something, I want to embrace this too? Maybe somebody's watching right now that has a business. They said, I want to be part of this. What would they need to do?
Well, they need to contact the website and get involved, and it's very simple. It's very straightforward. The criteria is not real tough, but access the information's available. And we found out that, both of us, we finished up as instructors, Command General Staff College, so we understand the difference of a MOS, a military occupational specialty, and a civilian description of a job or whatever. And that has to be translated, and military guys can do that. And so there's people available when they call in that will tell them. So whoever, whether it's Principal or John Deere or whoever, or Casey Stores, and by the way, Casey Stores led out and was one of the first to make a full commitment to this, and I'm very proud of that. And Bob will bear testimony, it's really worked.
Well, I was going to say, you should know from a personal standpoint, veterans have a certain set of skills that can be beneficial to anyone.
Well, Jackie, the military has to do the whole waterfront, whether it's TI or finance or logistics or whatever, they have to do it. And generally, there's something that somebody's hiring somebody else to find for them, and there they are, right there available.
They shake out the good ones, so you get the good ones that are working for the military. You might as well take advantage of the veterans that are available.
Are there incentives for the companies that take part in this program?
No, there are no incentives for the companies, but think about the skill sets they're receiving.
That they're getting.
That's your
that
incentive.
They couldn't recruit, for example, this whole leadership component that's so critical to military service. And that young person is bringing that skill set with them to the workforce.
No, Congressman, this could be any size business. Casey's obviously one of the best companies in the state of Iowa, actually in the nation. But any size business could take advantage of this?
I had a person show up at the farm that was going to do some repairs to a machine, and he had been a helicopter mechanic. And so I happened to talk to his supervisor back at the dealership. He said, this guy, we trained him so quick, because he was motivated, he believed in teamwork, and wanted to get the job done, and and all these things. And there's a lot of those skills, and I think Bob makes a good point. It's an investment. I'd like to yield to Bob to talk about that, because companies are hunting for people. They spend quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's not really a charitable contribution that we ask for. I like to frame it under the term, it's an operational expense. For example, if you needed a skill set, and you couldn't hire that locally, you'd hire an agency to go out and find that at an expense. Well, now you can go to Workforce Development's website, and you can begin interacting, and you can select from a number of candidates. And so I would argue that it's well worth the expense if you're going to make a contribution to Home Base Iowa. You don't need to do that, but certainly in order to keep the program going.
Well, it's an investment, access to a pool of talent that's there, and they're wanting the job.
They're wanting the job.
It's a proven pool of talent.
It is.
Absolutely.
And they're starting, in many cases, Lou, they're starting young families, and here they are. They didn't expect this, and they're stuck with this situation. And Home Base Iowa, get into the details of it, provides them a way to have a contact, a way to get here, a way to go to have an interview, and not at their expense. And that's one of the many reasons it's been so successful over 1,300 is a pretty good thing
That's
for
pretty
something
good number.
That's a great beginning.
It's been operationally just a little over a year.
That's very impressive. Now, if you want more information on Home Base Iowa, what's the easiest way to get some more information on this?
Well, you can go to the Home Base Iowa website.
Easy enough. HomebaseIowa.gov doesn't get any easier
absolutely.
than
That's straightforward as can be.
Yeah.
But this is great. What you guys are doing over at Casey's has always been outstanding. It's usually above and beyond whatever the call is, and you have proven that. And Congressman, thank you for being here to share your story too. And both, thank you. Thanks for your service once again.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you and Jackie because what
Absolutely.
you're doing today will put the word out, and there'll be somebody else will know about this and respond to it because of what was happening here today, and that it'll happen.
We hope so. We hope a lot of people respond to
Okay.
this too.
Thank
because
you.
the more veterans we can get back into the workforce, the better we are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
You bet.
We'll be right back. It is 9:42. You're watching Great Day live on KC.